All right, let's dive into the world of a really amazing bird, the golden pheasant. The stuff you brought today has me totally captivated. We're going to look into its appearance, behavior, and even some of the symbolisms surrounding it. And, oh, some of the challenges they face. You're ready to get wowed.
Definitely. And I think listeners will be surprised by this bird, how it combines such a vibrant look with an ability to just disappear. It's fascinating.
Yeah, okay. Let's talk about how they look first because, I mean, the male golden pheasant, he is a total knockout. We're talking bright golden yellow crest going down the neck, brilliant scarlet body plumage.
Oh, and that tail.
Right, the tail, it can be like over two-thirds of its body length and with those intricate black markings.
hmm
Seriously impressive.
It really is like a visual masterpiece. And it all comes down to this powerful evolutionary force, sexual selections, those amazing colors on the males. It's basically that way of being like, hey, look at me, trying to attract the ladies.
Yeah.
But it goes beyond just being flashy. It's showing off their genetic fitness. The brighter the colors, the healthier the male tends to be, better chances of passing those genes on.
So it's like the bird world's most intense fashion show, where the flashiest wins the genetic lottery or something.
Exactly. And all this competition for mates, it's driven the evolution of these super extravagant traits. But there is a downside.
Oh, right. Makes them stand out to predators, too.
Yep, that brilliant plumage can make them more visible.
That's such a fascinating balance, right? Like, attract a mate, but don't become somebody's lunch. What's interesting to me is even though they're so colorful, they're known for being super elusive. The material here says they prefer these like dense forests and bamboo thickets in those mountainous areas of western China.
Right, and that habitat's a huge part of how they survive. Those thick forests, they give the birds so much cover, they can just vanish, almost like magic, into the undergrowth.
Right.
And they're so agile, they'd rather run than fly if there's danger.
So even with those flashy colors, they've kind of mastered the art of camouflage.
Right.
But if they're so good at hiding, how do they even find each other to mate?
That's where it gets really cool. Male golden pheasants, they put on this elaborate courtship display. It's captivating. It's not just about looks, but sound, too.
Ooh, okay, I gotta hear about this. What does he do?
So picture this. The male fans out his huge tail, creating this like backdrop of all those intricate patterns. Then he spreads what's called his golden cape, those bright feathers around his neck. Then he starts circling the female, making all these calls, doing these bobs. It's pretty amazing.
Whoa, so it's like a full-on sensory experience, huh? Visuals and soundtracks, gonna be like a choreographed dance to really impress her.
Mhm.
But this is more than just a pretty show, right? It goes back to that whole sexual selection thing we were talking about.
Exactly. It's him showing off, like, hey, look how healthy and strong I am. I have the best genes. And the females, well, they're the judges in this whole contest, carefully checking out each performance before they pick.
This whole ritual is wild.
Mm.
But there's more to it than just biology, am I right? The golden pheasant, it has deep meaning in Chinese culture.
Yeah, you're right. It's not just a gorgeous bird, it's like a cultural icon, often tied to things like prosperity, good fortune, happiness, all the good stuff.
Makes you wonder how that connection came about,
Mm.
Why the golden pheasant specifically?
Well, in Chinese mythology, it's closely connected to the legend of the phoenix, a symbol of renewal, immortality, all that. The phoenix, usually shown in these fiery golds and reds, it's said to bring good luck and keep away bad spirits.
Oh, I see. So the golden pheasant, with its colors and how striking it looks, it became like a real-world version of this mythical creature. So it carries all those positive meanings with it.
Exactly, like a real-life connection to these myths and legends. Brings a bit of magic to the everyday.
Yes.
Sadly, though, the challenges these birds face in the real world are very real, too.
Right, yeah. The stuff you brought up, it talks about the tougher side of things, the conservation concern. We should dig into those more. What are some of the biggest threats to how they're doing out in the wild? So we've been talking all about how beautiful and symbolic these birds are, but what about the threats they face? What are the biggest things putting golden pheasant survival at risk?
Habitat loss, that's a huge one. Deforestation from things like agriculture and logging, it's breaking up their forest homes. And it's not just any forest they need. It's got to be those really dense, bamboo-rich areas for cover and to find food.
So not just losing trees, but it's like the specific kind of forest is going away, which
Yeah.
makes it that much harder.
Right, exactly. And then you have this fragmentation of the populations. It makes them way more vulnerable to diseases and genetic issues. It's like this whole web of problems.
Yeah, I bet it makes it hard to study and keep track of them too, right? Since they're so good at hiding.
It really really does. It's tough to get a solid count on their population, which then makes it harder to figure out if conservation efforts are even working.
Hmm.
They're listed as least concern on that IUCN Red List, but,
That doesn't mean they're totally fine, right?
Right. Least concern, it can give a bit of a false sense of security. It doesn't mean they're not dealing with some serious stuff.
So what is being done to help? Are there any programs or anything specifically for the golden pheasant?
There are some conservation efforts going on, but they're usually pretty localized and run into a bunch of challenges. Some groups are working on restoring habitats that have been damaged and creating corridors to connect those fragmented forests.
That sounds promising, like connecting those isolated groups could really help.
Yeah, it could. It lets those genes flow, creates more space to live, and lowers the risks that come with isolation. But these projects need a lot of long-term commitment, and money's often a problem.
I can imagine community involvement is super important too.
Hmm.
Do the people living in those areas play a role in these efforts?
They're crucial. Getting local communities on board and making sure they understand how important the golden pheasant is, it's key. In some places, they're involved in sustainable forestry practices or ecotourism projects that actually end up benefiting both the people and the pheasants.
That's awesome. It sounds like there's a growing understanding that, hey, protecting this bird isn't just about saving some pretty feathers. It's about protecting this whole cultural symbol and making sure the ecosystem stays healthy for everyone.
Exactly. And their story, it's kind of like what's happening with a lot of species all over. Habitat loss, fragmentation, climate change. These are huge issues we need to tackle on a global scale.
We've covered a lot of the science and the conservation work, but I'm curious, what about you personally? Have you ever come across these birds in the wild?
I have, and man, it was unforgettable. I was trekking through this bamboo forest in China, and I hear this rustling in the undergrowth. Thought, oh, maybe a little animal or something. And then there it was, a male golden pheasant in all his glory.
Wow, that must have been incredible.
Totally breathtaking. He just stopped for a second, like he was posing for a picture, then poof, gone back into those thick plants. It was so quick, but it really drove home why what we do is important.
It's moments like that that remind us why we do this, huh? It's not all data and reports. It's about making sure these amazing creatures are around for other people to see, even generations from now.
Yeah, exactly. It's about making sure those little flashes of brilliance keep lighting up our world.
I love that. It's amazing how much we've learned in this deep dive. We've gone from those tiny details on their feathers to exploring the heart of their forests, from their amazing mating dances to the things threatening them in this changing world. What's the most fascinating thing about the golden pheasant for you?
You know, what really gets me is how they can thrive in this state of perfect balance. They're showy and hidden at the same time, stunning us with their beauty, but also like masters of their secret world. They kind of show us that even when things are tough, nature finds a way,
Yeah,
and that what we do can really make a difference in keeping them around.
that's so well said. They remind us that even the smallest things can teach us huge lessons about being tough, adapting, and how everything's connected. It feels like we just scratched the surface, even with this whole deep dive. The golden pheasant, it's like the more you learn, the more there is to uncover?
It shows you just how many amazing things are out there in the natural world. Every species has its own story, its own like ups and downs. And the golden pheasant story, man, it's a good one.
It really is. We've talked about how stunning they look, how they can basically blend in with their surroundings, those crazy courtship rituals, their cultural importance, and of course, all the stuff putting their survival at risk. What a journey.
And it really highlights why it's so important to get this, how delicately balanced everything is in our ecosystems.
For sure. So as we wrap up our deep dive here, I want to leave everyone with a thought. We've explored the world of this bird, but how does it connect to your world?
Maybe it makes you more curious about nature in general? Maybe you want to learn about the birds you see every day or help out with conservation efforts near you.
It could even be something as simple as telling someone else about all this, getting the word out about how amazing and fragile life on Earth is.
It's true. Every little thing you do, no matter how small, it all adds up. It becomes part of this bigger movement of understanding and appreciating nature.
Perfectly said. And with that, we've come to the end of our deep dive into the world of the golden pheasant. We hope you loved this journey as much as we did. Until next time, keep exploring and stay curious.